The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello, good evening, and welcome to a very special, very live episode of Wrestling with Johners for a Wednesday evening. And I've got not just one guest, but I've got two very special guests with me tonight on Wrestling with Johners. First of all, at the bottom screen there, you can see him right below me, a good friend of mine and the author of the book that we're going to be talking about this evening, Marc Mero, and Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man, Ben Veal. Ben, how are you doing this fine evening, my friend?
All the better for seeing you, John. Thank you for
Excellent.
welcoming me in such a lovely way.
Absolutely. We'll talk more to Ben about the book and about his various interests, and of course about his connection with Marc, who is my guest on the right-hand side of the screen. Former Golden Gloves winner, former three-time WCW World Television Champion, and former WWF Intercontinental Champion, the owner and the founder of Champion of Choices, none other than Marc Mero. Marc, fantastic to have you on Wrestling with Johners. How are you doing this evening? Or is it in the middle of the afternoon there, of course?
Well, yeah, it is. It's only about 3 o'clock here, but I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show. Been looking forward to this. You know, Ben's talked to me. Ben and I have become very good friends, and obviously he's really shared about you guys' friendship. So I was really excited about being on the show today.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you on this very special episode of Wrestling with Johners. And of course, we are here to talk about and to promote this book here that I held just a moment ago. Marc Mero, A Bad to Good, the inspiring story of a wrestling wild man. And of course, you're going to be on a bit of a book tour of the UK soon, Marc, and you're flying over. I think you land or touch down this coming Monday. Tell us a little bit about your most recent trip to the UK, which happens next week.
I believe that we're going to Aberdeen. Ben, you can help me out with this. I know we're in Manchester, Aberdeen, and there's one too, right?
It's a good thing you're not in charge of your own tour itinerary. Otherwise, you'd be all over the place. Mark's going to be in Glasgow, Manchester, and Newcastle with Inside the Ropes on the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th of April.
See, they just point me where to go, okay? I'm not real good at directions. They just point me where to go, and I show up.
We'll get there, but yeah, Mark will be doing 3 nights with Kenny McIntosh from Inside the Ropes, intimate evenings with fans, talking about his career and everything that led up to Bad to Good and why it was the right time to share his life story.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the book. Let's open with the book and let's bring up some images on screen. And Marc Mero, Bad to Good, available now at all good bookstores, including Amazon. And where, of course, guys, when it first launched, it charted very, very well. And it's still doing very well in the paperback version and the Kindle version, charting very highly. But I started with you, Marc. You must be very, very pleased with how the book is performing so far. And I think it was released maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago, but you must be thrilled with how it's going so far.
I'm very, very pleased, you know, I'm excited about coming over to the UK. I mean, every time I've ever been to the UK, I've enjoyed it. Some of the biggest wrestling fans in the world are in the UK. So those 3 nights that I get to spend sharing and talking, signing autographs, and meeting so many people. I mean, I was there a year ago, and that's when I first met Ben in person, and we just hit it off. And when we decided to write this book, remember that this is 1 year of Zoom calls, 1 year of, you know, digging into the past, whether good or bad, and really authentic, really sharing true stories and things that I went through, and heartbreak, loss, overcoming addiction, and making the most amazing comeback in the world, finding my purpose and finding my calling as a presenter of Champion of Choices.
Absolutely. And Ben, this is your first published book. You kind of write for various magazines and publications, but your first published book. You must be kind of thrilled to have the opportunity to write for Marc, to tell his story, but also with how it's performing and how it's been received as well.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I've shared this with Marc, he knows this, but I knew within about 10 minutes of speaking with Marc for the first time that I was going to write his book. I just knew that. We had an instant connection on the first interview we did. I interviewed Marc for Inside the Ropes, where I write a monthly column which is called Outside the Ropes, rather creatively, where I look at people's lives after wrestling. And Marc was right at the top of my list of people I wanted to interview, because I remember obviously his career very vividly, but I followed a lot of what he was doing afterwards, and I was really drawn, especially since becoming a dad myself, to what he was doing with young people. And so when I reached out to him tail end of 2023 for an interview, we did a quick, 45 minutes, one of these, fired a lot of questions, tried to kind of get the essence of his life in an hour. And as soon as, I felt kind of drawn to tears by the end of that conversation, because I was just so moved by Marc's story and kind of what we went through on a whistle-stop tour. And I sent him a message out of the blue, and I said, Marc, great conversation. Can we have a quick Zoom call separately, privately? Because I've got an idea I want to put to you. And I just said to him, Marc, I want to write your book. I think you have a life story that needs to be told, and I want to be the one to do it. And that was where it all began. And then March 2024, as Marc says, he was over for the love of wrestling. So we went there for a couple of days together. I sat at his table, which was amazing, because I was able to hear firsthand what fans were asking him about. Because I had a hunch that, obviously people want to know what happened with Sable and, the inner workings of WWE and Vince McMahon and Johnny B. Bad. But I had a hunch that also there was a really large proportion of wrestling fans who wanted to know about Marc's life after wrestling. Because if you follow a lot of Marc's social media, the majority of it is not Marc talking wrestling. The majority of it is him sharing inspirational messages and his work he's doing with young people. And I thought there's no way that I was going to write a wrestling book, because that is a section, and a very valuable section, of Marc's wrestling life, or his life rather, but it is not Marc Mero's full story. His full story is incredible. The story of the man for the 31 years before he got into wrestling business is incredible, and what he's done for the 20 years since. So I think for me, Bad to Good is very much, it's that whole picture of who Marc Mero is, the person, very much from humble beginnings to scaling the highest highs that you can possibly scale in life, and then sinking to the lowest lows and bouncing back. And it's, it's a real life rock story. And I hope, and Marc and I hope that it'll touch and inspire a lot of people to realize that no matter where you are in life, there's always you can always bounce back, and you can always aim higher. So it's an inspirational book and a wrestling book, but I think more an inspirational book than a wrestling book.
Marc, had you ever considered having your kind of your life written about in a book before Ben approached you? Had it ever crossed your mind? Had it ever been a thought that you might have a book written about your life one day?
Jonas, this is something I've always wanted to do. I wrote a book 14 years ago called How to Be the Happiest Person on the Planet. And that did well, but it wasn't my whole story. And I looking back now, I am so glad I waited, because so many things have transpired in my life. So many things have happened in my life. Being a speaker now for 18 years, we were able to share many stories from students that wrote to me and how their life was changed or saved by the presentation. And like I said, I'm not trying to brag, but I couldn't have had a better writer friend to do the book, because Ben also understands a lot about certain things that I was going through, that maybe he went through, and other people that will read this have gone through or are going through, whether it's loss of a loved one, a broken heart, depression, anxiety, finding your place, dreaming big, whatever it would be, we have in the book. And I think that when someone reads it, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I've gone through that, or I know someone that went through that, or I want to do this, write your dreams and goals into existence, taking action towards your dreams, and then achieving the most amazing things, and then going beyond that. Because I got to tell you guys, I will never retire. I'll just refire. And that's how I want to live my life. I think anyone that reads that will get the same inspiration out of it, that, man, the rest of your life will be the best of your life. And you have to believe that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing as well. Sorry, John, but when, obviously what I've done here is, obviously I'm a co-writer, a ghostwriter, whatever you want to call it. But, I've been working with Marc to find his voice. And the wonderful thing about that is that I've had Marc Mero's voice in my head for a year. And if you're going to be stuck with someone's head in your voice every day, he is literally the most positive man I know. So it's helped me as well, having a little Marc Mero in my head the whole time.
And Marc, let me ask you,
Ben.
what sort of response and feedback have you had from family members, friends, fans from all over the world, people that you've inspired? Now that they know and maybe have read your book, what sort of response has it received, and what sort of feedback have you had?
Well, I'll be honest, this is the most amazing. We have not had one negative feedback yet, okay? But it's just been positive 5-star reviews. And I think it surprises a lot of people, because there's a lot of things I wrote about that I have never told anybody about. And that was obviously before I got into wrestling, the drug dealing, the stories that Ben and I shared with that part of my life was very dangerous, and got into a lot of trouble, been arrested. And there's so many stories in there that I think people are going to go, oh my gosh, I never would have known that about Marc. But I just wanted to tell the whole story.
Yeah. And I neglected to say at the very top, of course, we are live, so we are fielding questions. And if you are watching live, firstly, thank you so much, and get in touch with the show. If you have any questions for Marc Mero or Ben Veal, then please get in touch with the show. Send them through to us using your chosen device, and we'll do our very best over the course of this interview to bring up your questions and get them answered live on air with Marc Mero and Ben Veal. But Marc, let me direct that, and to Ben, I suppose, but start with you, Marc. Obviously, this book goes into a lot of detail about some particularly difficult and maybe dark periods of your life, some of which you've already kind of mentioned there. But it does cover everything from your humble beginnings through to your addiction issues and your marriage breakdown later on in the book. But were there any specific aspects of the book that were particularly hard or difficult to communicate or maybe get written down that eventually ended up in the book? Were there any particularly difficult aspects of the book that you found hard to talk about, or maybe even to write?
I think talking about the part where the drug overdose, the wanting to end your life, getting to the point where it's over with, that you made the decision to end your life. And I look back at that, and I got to tell you the blessing that comes out of that. I feel stronger than I've ever felt in my life. And it's through our struggles we find our strength. But the blessing I have is that because I've gone through so many hardships in my life, the loss of a loved one, divorce, depression, anxiety, drug addiction, all these things, I meet so many people that are now going through it, because it's like your current trial is going to be your future testimony. And when they look in my eye, they know I know exactly how they feel, and they can open up and talk to me. And I believe we have saved and changed so many lives, because I understand what it's like to get to that depth of just not wanting to be here and ending it all. I mean, we talk about in the book is that not only did I hit rock bottom, but I realized that rock bottom had a basement, and I went there too. So, but making this amazing comeback and helping other people make their comeback in life has just been a joy.
Yeah, and Ben, having to listen to these stories through Marc and put pen to paper, and you're the writer, the author of the book. Did you find any aspects of the book particularly hard to cope with when you were putting pen to paper and hearing these stories from Marc?
Yeah, I started writing the book not long after having lost my dad. So reliving, Marc's lost a lot of family. Death is a pretty recurrent theme throughout the book. I mean, it's a reality of life. You can't escape it. But I think Marc has lost more than his fair share of loved ones, and in some very tragic circumstances. And, reliving a lot of that, we certainly bonded over that. It's hard, and you feel a weight of responsibility. I do, to give Marc's, to pay justice to Marc's story and of his loved ones. So that was probably the hardest bit. I mean, as Marc said, kind of going back to his darkest days and his feelings of wanting to end it all. I mean, we made the decision between us to begin the book with that. That is the prologue, because it's just such the stark reality of this wrestling superstar about to become yet another wrestling casualty. it was too kind of profound not to have at the outset of the book. I mean, I think one of the hardest things of being a wrestling fan is obviously we've lost so many of the greats that we loved watching when we were younger, and Marc Mero came very, very close to being yet another statistic. So yeah, but we went through some very tough elements, but also we had a lot of fun, because this is also a book that is full to the brim of Johnny B. Bad stories, Wildman Marc Mero stories, Marvelous Marc Mero stories. We've got TNA in there. We've got every aspect of Mark's in-ring career is covered at length. So, I don't want people to think, oh, this is all doom and gloom, or this is just all a really inspirational story. This is also a wrestling book for wrestling fans, written by a wrestling fan. And that's what I think I've infused into it, is probably a scary amount of knowledge about wrestling in a certain era of the 90s. And Mark and I was often reminding him of matches that he was in, and then we were having to kind of play back and go, oh yeah, because he wrestled so many matches and he had so many opponents. And of course, the thing for you and I, when we, I'll vividly remember certain events because I'm watching as a fan, but to a touring talent in the WWF or WCW at that time, wrestling at Survivor Series 96 is just another night. And then until you're on to the next town and the next town. And it's easy for us to forget just the sheer churn that wrestlers went through, especially in the 90s. So there was a lot of kind of working through a timeline, being incredibly methodical with all of Mark's opponents, all of his big matches and moments, and then making sure that all of that was documented in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I want to ask you, the book has forwards in there from two very good friends of yours, two people that are very, very close to your heart, Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, of course. What did it mean to you to have two people that are such good friends and so close to you provide the forwards to your book?
Well, I think what's so amazing about that, and Ben can attest to this, is that, long time ago when we decided that I would have two of my friends write the forward, DDP and Lex. Who would ever think that now, Lex is going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and Diamond Dallas Page has had a big place in his life, helping him walk again, and hopefully we'll see him walk that stage and not be in the wheelchair. But it's just been incredible. They're both just such inspirational friends. Dallas lives about 20 minutes down the road, so we're always trying to out inspire each other. We work out together a lot of times, and gosh, last time I was over there, he stuck me in that cold plunge, and I wanted to kill him. Okay, that's the last time I do that. But he's a lot of fun, and we wrestle each other, man, hundreds of times, because we opened so many pay-per-views together. We traveled the road together, and we've always been very close. And I couldn't be more proud of what he's doing now, and also more proud of what Lex is doing now. Lex is speaking at a lot of churches about his faith, and it's been incredible. He's led so many people to change their lives. And it's so, like, when I see Lex and we get talking, he'll tell me I'm the happiest I ever been. And he's in a wheelchair. I'm thinking he had the best body in professional wrestling, and he's the happiest now he's ever been. And to see that joy and that confidence and that just seeing God shine through him, man, is just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question,
Go ahead, Ben.
Mark. How many times has one-time WWE Hall of Famer and three-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion Diamond Dallas Page actually beat you?
We joke about that quite a bit, DDP and I. Unfortunately, he never got to beat me in wrestling. But, because right when I left to go to WWF, we were going to have another pay-per-view against each other, and he was going to eventually get his first win over me. But I left before that happened, and we kind of joke about that. But he went on to such great heights as a three-time world champion at WCW, and just was such an amazing, amazing character, the people's champion, and they loved him over there. And just to see that transformation when I left, it's just been great. We used to talk on the phone all the time, and I would just be beaming, talking to him, knowing he just beat Macho Man or beat someone, that winning the title. He just, beat like Razor Ramon or something, or not, or Scott Hall. So it was just incredible.
I'll tell you something else, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of people in the book who are, as well as the two forewords, there's contributions from Mick Foley, from Eric Bischoff, from Justin Roberts, from Vince Russo. There's a lot of guys who are involved. And I tell you, all I had to do was send one email to each of them and say the name Marc Mero. And without question, all of them immediately got involved. I think that really speaks to the impact Marc has had in the business and also the person he is.
Yeah, and conversely to one of the questions from earlier, do you each have a favourite part of the book, a story that you're particularly proud to tell and to get in print? But any particular favourite moments or favourite chapters, or a favourite chapter from each of you, starting with yourself, Marc?
I think when we talk about winning my first title, was the World Television title. I beat Steve Regal, who was amazing to work with. Such a talent he is. And I remember winning that and dedicating it to my mother at the time. And, winning your first belts when you're making it in the business is just an incredible a feat that I had. And then I exchanged it, I think, 2 or 3 times with Lex Luger. So having someone like that, and the last time I wrestled Lex was him taking the belt off of me because I was leaving the company.
There we go. Let's bring up that picture of yourself with the World Television Championship. And Ben, any particular favourite parts of the book? Of course, you wrote the whole thing. You know the book better than the back of your hand. But any that really stand out to you as being some of your favourite parts of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the Brawl for All chapter. I mean, there's a lot of ones that are a lot of fun. But for me, I've always been fascinated by the Brawl for All. I was like 14 years old when that tournament was happening. I didn't understand it at the time, and 30 years on, I still don't understand it. So to ask Marc, what on earth was anyone thinking with that tournament? Why did anyone take part, and how did anyone think that any good was going to come out of putting wrestlers into a shoot boxing scenario on live TV? We unpick all of that tournament, all of the guys that were in it. Some of Marc's kind of wranglings with Steve Blackman and Bradshaw and the various guys that were part of that tournament. And I found that absolutely fascinating because it was just one of those weird moments that happened in the Attitude Era, which you just think, what was anyone thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to move on to other topics very soon. Just remind us where the book can be found, where it can be purchased. Obviously, I mentioned Amazon, but is it available at all good booksellers, as they say? Ben, I'm going to throw this one over to you. Where can we get our hands on Marc Mero and Bad to Good?
So the book's very new, so it's only been out about 3 weeks. Best place to buy it is Amazon in the UK and the US, or from InsideTheRopesMagazine.com, where you can buy it direct. And I believe you get a little discount from going directly to them as well.
Brilliant. And let's talk about something else, another passion project, which is, looks like hugely documented in the book as well. And that is Champion of Choices, Marc, and a project that you've been heading up now. You're the founder of Champion of Choices for, I think we established about 18 years now. Let me bring up some pictures because it really is a phenomenal thing that you created almost by chance 18 years ago, but now you are the leading speaker to schools across America and further afield around the world, as we will touch upon. But tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, 18 years. Congratulations. That's a fantastic milestone. What does it mean to you to have been speaking to schools and young people around the US and around the world for the last 18 years, Marc?
I started this when I was 47 years old. And I remember thinking at that time and telling some of my friends, man, I could do this for maybe 3 years, but after 3 years, no kid's going to listen to a guy over 50 years old coming in their school trying to inspire them, And now, being that I'm going to be turning 65 this summer, I have never connected better with students in my life. I mean, often get a standing ovation from students from middle or high school and college. And it's just been a joy. I mean, I really talk about relevant issues that students face today. And it isn't like even back when you or me or Ben Bennett were in school, it was never as bad as it is now because this smartphone has outsmarted us. And it's unfortunate that kids that are so addicted to their phones and they're scrolling all night, they don't get enough sleep, they don't eat properly. and then depression sets in. Then, of course, they take kid to the doctor, and the medication sets in, and it's just been a vicious cycle. And I think that by going to schools and doing my 1 hour presentation has just changed so many lives. And then doing community events where you invite the parents to come back and see the presentation, and have great hard talks with parents about how they're raising their kids, because we're seeing a lot of parents that are working 2 jobs trying to finagle this, and kids are kind of raising themselves, or the internet is raising kids today. And but the bottom line is we've helped a lot of people, and I know you can't help everybody, but the old analogy of a little boy walking along the ocean, and there's starfish washed up on the shore, hundreds of them, thousands of them, and he starts picking them up, and he throws one in, and walks a little further, throws another one in. An old man sees him and says, "Hey kid, what do you do? Save them all?" And he picks up another one, he throws in the ocean, he says, "I just saved that one." And that's how I look at it, man. I want to try and help as many people as I possibly can, and continue doing this for as long as I can.
Absolutely. And you've been over to the UK, I think, early 2024 to visit schools in the UK. But you have made this a global project as well. You visited many countries outside of the US. In fact, I've got some more photos here where you were, helping the troops, with the troops there as well. So you really do kind of touch and reach out and affect and help so many people all across the world, and of course the United States. But tell us about some of the other countries that you visited with Champion of Choices, Marc.
I went to Guatemala last year, and it was incredible. And it was amazing because all the kids have learned English, but when I do the community events for the parents, they all have to use the translator. So it was kind of an amazing thing that I saw. But I think my favorite place I went to, when I say favorite, it's because I realized that as different as we are, we're so much alike. And that was Russia. I spoke at schools in Russia, and it was absolutely incredible. And the same reaction that the Russian students had for me was the same reaction they have here in the United States or other countries that just love the presentation. But the Russian kids have the same issues that our kids have. And they just, they just want hope. And I think that's what we all look for in life is having hope. And that's what I bring there. I bring hope, I bring joy, and I just bring resilience and overcoming adversity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that a common trend of yours at your talks is that you take the white strapped Intercontinental Championship with you pretty much wherever you go, and the young people there, maybe some of the adults there, get a chance to stand with yourself for photo opportunities holding the white strapped Intercontinental Championship. And I think it's the best looking Intercontinental Championship, if you want my honest opinion. But that must open up kind of the conversation, because maybe a lot of the young people may not have known that you were a very famous professional wrestler. So maybe it opens up that conversation, and maybe helps them to engage more when you're there with your wrestling championship, maybe.
Well, they weren't even born when I wrestled, most of them. Okay, so, but you want to put a smile on a kid's face, throw the belt around his shoulder. I gotta tell you, man, it opens up conversation, and every kid wants to take a picture with that belt, not even knowing anything about that belt, but just know that it's a champion that wears it. And that's why, the kids line up and want to take pictures with me. And they want to put the belt on. Great. I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me ask you, Champion of Choices, you just seem to be getting busier and busier every single year, probably more dates year on year on year, Marc, and more countries. But you're not slowing down anytime soon, are you? I think you're planning to take it on the road to as many towns, cities, and schools that feel that they can benefit from having you there to present to their school children. But like I say, you just seem to be getting busier, but enjoying it more every single year.
I got to stay young, guys. Got to keep busy, man. I average about 230 a year, and I love it, man. I don't know. I don't know any different. That's I've been living out of a hotel for over 30 years of my life. And it's just been an incredible, I love it. I don't know how you can put it into any other words other than I found my calling, and I found my purpose.
Yeah, well, congratulations on all of your hard work with Champion of Choices. A few people that are watching us live at home and reached out to we got Leonard, just sent some happy smiley faces there, happy to be tuning in via YouTube. And we've got The Meltdown watching us live via YouTube. Great seeing you guys. And congratulations on the success of Bad to Good. Much love from Brian. Oh, that's Brian Clark, I'm assuming, watching us live.
Adam Bomb himself.
Oh, he's a great guy.
There we go. Thank you so much, Brian, for tuning in. And for anybody else watching live at home across YouTube and Facebook, thank you once again. And if you have any questions for Marc Mero or for Ben Veal, then please get them through to us and we'll do our very best. Marc, when I first became aware of you, we're talking maybe 30 plus years ago. And of course, over here in the UK, especially after the world of sport finished in the late 1980s, our only exposure to professional wrestling would have been WCW every Saturday afternoon with Saturday with WCW Saturday Night, of course. I'm sure Ben remembers. And more than anything, I remember very, very vividly see you, Marc, hit our TV screens. In fact, explode through our TV screens with this charismatic, flamboyant character that we know as Johnny B. Bad. But you played Johnny B. Bad for several years before joining the WWF. You must have some amazing and very, very fond memories of playing that character in your WCW years.
You know, I think my favorite memories was that Dusty Rhodes discovered me, and he's the one that, you know, came up with the character Johnny B. Bad. And, you know, here I am coming out of before that, you know, I was a boxer. And so Dusty Rhodes has got to teach me how to walk and talk like this character that he has envisioned in his head. And, you know, we all know how flamboyant Dusty Rhodes was, you know, so for him, it was so easy to come out there and say, I'm a bad man. Look at me. I'm so pretty, you know. And so he's got to teach me that. And so I think some of my fond memories, and I wrote about the book, was that Dusty and I would go to the arena early and he'd work with me. And he'd say, I want you to do it like this. You walk up to that microphone and you say, I'm so pretty, I should be born a little girl. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we get laughing because I watch him do it, you know, and he was just so flamboyant and smooth. But he got me to get it down. And so those are some memories that I'll always cherish, that I got to spend that quality time with my mentor, Dusty Rhodes.
Absolutely. Let's bring up some pictures of that flamboyant, charismatic, over-the-top character, and one of my favorite characters back in the early 90s when watching WCW every Saturday afternoon. But as you mentioned, you're a former three-time WCW World Television Champion, Marc. And not only is that a fantastic accomplishment and accolade to have, but it also meant that during those 3 tenures as champion, you got to face some of the biggest names, you know, in the world of wrestling and on the WCW roster, and of course being featured very regularly on WCW TV as their television champion. But you really did face the biggest and the best names that WCW had on their roster during that time period.
I did. And, you know, not only face them, but you learn so much from the greats. You know, I got to wrestle. I mean, I remember watching Ric Flair when I was young, flipping through the TV channels and seeing Ric Flair. And then one day I'd actually be in the ring with this guy. It was absolutely incredible. You know, wrestling guys like Arn Anderson and Sting and Eddie Guerrero, and the list goes on and on, Steve Regal. You know, it was just been Kevin Nash. You know, there's so many, DDP. There were so many that I've wrestled. I mean, I was in wrestling probably the greatest time. The WCW time. Then when we went to WF, it was the Attitude Era. And you look around the locker room and you have Shawn Michaels, you got Triple H, you got The Rock. You know, it was just absolutely incredible, the talent that was there. I got to wrestle Undertaker. The list goes on and on and on of all the top names that I was able to wrestle with and compete with.
Absolutely. And then you moved over to WWF in 1996 as the Wildman, Marc Mero. Now, quite a transition from the over-the-top flamboyant Johnny B. Bad to Wildman Marc Mero. Was there any conversation, any discussion about bringing you in as a Johnny B. Bad-esque character, or maybe something a bit more colorful?
Well, I think that's what the thought was. Okay. And what happened was there were so many lawsuits going back and forth when there was the Monday Night Wars going back and forth between the two companies. You know, I mean, you have one guy on television and next week he's on the other television, you know, so there was a lot of lawsuits. And I remember when I signed, I think Vince probably thought he was going to get something like the Johnny B. Bad character. And unfortunately, we had to change it all around. So they had their creative come up with this character. And I didn't really get it when they flew me into creative and Vince was there and he says, "Let me ask you a question. What do you think of Wildman Marc Mero?" And I thought, you know what? They must know something I don't know. Because, you know, creative, they invented these amazing characters like The Undertaker, you know, and Diesel and Razor Ramon, and these characters that were just bigger than life. I thought, well, maybe they know something I don't know. I didn't really get it, you know. But then he said to me, "Can you do a Tarzan yell?" And I thought, oh man, I don't got a very strong voice, you know. So I said, "I don't think so, Vince." And I thought about it. I go, "Am I from the jungle? Like, where am I?" So it was very hard to connect with that character. And then also, you know, with my wife at the time, Sable, coming out with her, and she was the hottest thing coming up. So here you are, not only competing against another wrestler, but you're also have this beautiful woman who's taking all the attention away from the match.
Yeah. One of my fondest memories, certainly within your first year of WWF, would have been the King of the Ring tournament in June 1996. And of course, that infamous match you had with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and the kick to the face, or the kick to the mouth, that led to Stone Cold going to the hospital. And then when he returned, history was made with one of the most groundbreaking promos, Austin 316. And you were kind of there front and center in the arena when that happened, and very much had a hand, or should I say a foot, in how that all transpired.
Yeah, he owes Mark money.
There's some royalties coming, surely.
You know what's amazing when you say that is that I think about so many historical things that I was involved with. You know, I was there for, you know, obviously the King of the Ring, having a great match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was there when Mick Foley lost his ear in Germany. I was there for the Montreal screw job. I was there when Sid and Arn got in that horrific fight in the UK that almost ended their lives. So I was in so many amazing historical things that happened in wrestling over the years. And obviously, when Austin came up with, you know, Austin 316, it was groundbreaking and led to him becoming probably one of the biggest superstars, or top three ever in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the royalty check must be on the way in the post, Mark, I would say, but if you haven't received it already. But Ben, let me ask you, what were some of your fondest memories of watching Mark in either a WCW or a WWF ring from back in the day?
Well, as you say, I mean, obviously we had WCW in the early 90s. I got into wrestling in 92, very much on the WWF bandwagon. SummerSlam 92, anyone who knows me knows that is where it all began for me. So I kind of straddled between WWF and WCW, and I was drawn towards being brought in on the WWF at 8 years old. I was brought towards the big characters and the color. So obviously I turned on WCW, and Johnny B. Bad stands out beyond everyone else. Between Johnny B. Bad and Sting, you know, they were my kind of two action figures as a kid. You know, they were the ones that were, you know, amazing with all the colors and all the fun and games. And so I remember when Mark, the first WrestleMania I ever stayed up live for was WrestleMania 12. As a lifelong Bret Hart fan, you know, I couldn't wait to see Bret beat Shawn. That didn't happen, but you know, and I remember Mark's debut that night, and I remember Johnny B. Bad. I was so excited. He comes on, and he's just kind of there, like backstage, wearing a tan suit, not really, you know, gets into a quick scuffle, and that's it. And I remember even at 12 being like, that's a bit underwhelming. Even then, in my mind, at 12 years old, I knew, like, he should have they should be doing more with him. I didn't really understand booking, but I understood, like, that's Johnny B. Bad. Like, I was just watching WCW, like, that should be a bigger deal. So I remember all of that time, kind of 96, 97, 98, like, I was a huge fan of Wildman Marc Mero. You know, I loved the music, I loved the pyro, I loved the colors, I loved his athleticism. But there's always this feeling that, like, they really should, like, more should be happening with this guy. And obviously, when you're a kid, you don't really get into the nuances of what we understand as adult wrestling fans. Like, why is he being booked like he's being booked? But even at that 12, 13 time, it always felt like he was just kind of lost in the shuffle when he should have been a far bigger star. You got this guy who, you know, he's doing shooting star presses. No one's doing shooting star presses. He's got Sable with him. He's got this incredible entrance. And it just felt like it never really caught fire like it should have. And that's a really big strand of what we talk about in the book is why. Like, why was Wildman Marc Mero not WWF champion? Why did we not see more of Mark? Why did the WWF not manage to capitalize on a very, very successful run in WCW, especially when some of Mark's best kind of dance partners in Steve Austin and Triple H, he'd already danced a lot with them in WCW, so he had a proven track record of, you know, going toe to toe with these guys who would go on to lead the Attitude Era. And for me, just fascinating to spend so much time over many, many, many Zoom calls exploring the WWF creative process, exploring it through the eyes of a talent, because we see it as fans, but from the eyes of a frustrated talent, trying to get time with Vince, trying to actually lobby for their cause, trying to get more screen time. Absolutely fascinating, kind of diving into that with Mark. And for me, just exploring what could have been, because one of the big reasons why I wanted to write this book is I do feel like Marc Mero is one of the great names from that era who, in a lot of ways, in all due respect, Mark, and I've said this to Mark many times, so this won't be a surprise, but I feel like he should occupy a much bigger space in wrestling history books than he does. And I hope that this book is a kind of fitting bookend to his wrestling life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, just off the back of Ben's statement there, Mark, how would you like to have been booked differently or better, considering your incredible athleticism and look and charisma? You know, you were heavily featured in the few years you were there, but like Ben said, you know, there was so much that could have been done with, you know, everything, the package that you were bringing to the WWF machine. What opportunities do you think were missed?
Well, and we talk about this in the book in more in-depth detail, but because of me coming in, not only with the first guaranteed contract. Now, remember, Mick Foley and Steve Austin signed just before I got there, and they signed for an opportunity. That's all, no guaranteed contract. And I come in, you know, a few months later, and I get this big guaranteed contract, big signing bonus. And I bring my wife with me on the road, and it just ruffled a lot of feathers, and didn't really even understand it back then or realize how much I may have been disliked or the animosity towards me. But when you look back in history now, almost every wrestler gets a guaranteed contract. And I was the one that broke the glass ceiling. I'm the one that got Vince McMahon to write that first guaranteed contract, which led to everybody getting guaranteed contracts. But it was very difficult. It was wish I was booked a little different, because even when I won the title, it was like the guys that they had celebrate with me were guys that were not really particularly popular on television. It wasn't like they had the top guys like, you know, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels coming over and congratulating me. It had a lot of guys that really weren't really well known. And I realized at that point that they're not going to really push me the way I was really hoping they would push me. And, but, you know, I got to tell you, even when I find myself maybe talking a little negative, I remind myself, man, all the paths I took in life led to where I'm right now, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. So I don't know. It's just hard to even and Ben will tell you, when we talked, we obviously had to talk about a lot of negative things that happened, and for him to write this book, and I thought, oh gosh, I hate it. Because I don't like talking about people. I just don't believe in that. You know, as far as, you know, negativity. You see all these wrestling shows that they just bury other wrestlers and tell them how bad they were. I'll tell you something. Even though I may not have gotten along with some guys, whenever I see them at a wrestling convention, man, I walk right up and put my arms out for a big hug. Man, I don't have any animosity or bitterness towards anybody. And I think that's what makes life so beautiful, man. Yeah. It's not living with all that resentment and anger and hurt.
Yeah, and we are, of course, on the road to WrestleMania. And Ben mentioned how you were featured in a backstage brawl at WrestleMania 12 in 1996. And that was your very first appearance in the WWF, well, behind a WWF camera, I suppose. But you had to wait 2 whole years to make your WrestleMania debut with this match here, Mark. And it was the mixed tag match between yourself and Sable versus Luna and Goldust. A very interesting match, but I watched this match back in preparation for speaking to you today, and the reception that you guys got on your entrance, yourself and Sable, of course, and that the crowd were hot for the whole match, all of the action within that match. Sable got some incredible pops from the fans whenever she got the hot tag, and when yourself and Dustin or Goldust mixed it up in the ring, the action was fantastic. But that match certainly lives up to today's standards, in my opinion, and the fans were red hot for everything that went down in that match. Do you have any fond memories of your WrestleMania match in 1998, Mark?
I don't think it could have gone any better than it did. I mean, the mixed tag matches are hard to kind of coordinate everything, because you don't want, you know, guy in there with a girl, and you don't want to have too much. We played it just enough to make it really entertaining. And like you said, when I hit Sable with that hot tag, that roof blew off at the Fleet Center in Boston. It was incredible. Her chasing Loon around the ring, and the place was going crazy. And then when we won that match, it just, again, the roof blew off again. And it was just, I don't know, just great memories from that. And of course, I pretended like it was all because of me, when I'm doing all my braggadocious things, is turning that heel character more and more and more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I would put it right up there with 20. I'd put it right up there with 20 years on Ronda Rousey when she made her debut in a mixed tag, and the great role that Triple H and Stephanie did alongside Kurt in terms of making her a star from the gate. I think that's exactly what Mark and Dustin and Luna did with Sable in 1998. And there's a section in the book where Vince Russo shares his very honest opinion. He essentially says, to summarize, that Marc Mero in many ways sacrificed his wrestling career for his wife's success. And we talk about that at length in the book. Mark is very, very open about, you know, obviously how Sable's trajectory ultimately went like that, as his went like that. And there's no bitterness there. It's just fact. But it is interesting to think what could have been, or what would have been potentially, had it just been Marc Mero in the WWF. I think, you know, so much of the success from that period was because Mark put so much time into supporting his wife, but also Rena had this incredible connection with the audience from day one. She was a superstar, and that's the kind of thing that you can't fake and you can't replicate. It just happens. Some people just have that it factor, and she had it. So we've tried to give as much space as possible as well in the book to Rena's story, on the basis that Rena probably will never have her own book out and may never tell her story. Mark obviously lived so much with her for so long, that we've really tried to do justice to her career, because, you know, she did have a Hall of Fame career without a shadow of a doubt. Mark said that multiple times on record. She should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. It's a crime that she's not, for everything she did, for the eyeballs that she brought to mainstream wrestling. So I think that's a really important point, that this isn't in any way anyone who's expecting that this might be a tell-all story about the ins and outs of their marriage or anything like that. Obviously, we do talk personally, but at no point is this a burial of Rena or anything she did. Mark, you've gone sideways.
I don't know what happened there. I don't know why that did that. Let me see if I can fix it here.
There you go. It should correct itself.
That's
there we go. We can still see you. We can still see you.
Okay.
But let's see. We've got Jonah from Rewind, Recap, and Relive, watching live at home. Let's go, Ben. You're doing an amazing work, my friend. Congrats to you and Mark on the book. And we got Mark in full horizontal mode there. There we go. But great to have Jonah watching us live at home on YouTube. Mark, I need to ask you, what's your kind of relationship with wrestling in 2025? Do you occasionally do the convention circuit, or do you still like to catch up with old wrestling buddies, or maybe attend one or two shows? I'm assuming you're probably too busy doing the tours of the schools and speaking to young people, but what's your relationship with wrestling in 2025?
Well, I occasionally watch it on television, every now and then. I love what I don't know. I just think it's very, very entertaining right now. We're going into WrestleMania. There's so many questions on what's going to happen. So that part is pretty entertaining. The conventions, I do maybe 3 conventions a year. And I just was in Charlotte last week doing an autograph signing. And I have another one coming up that I do. And I love meeting the fans, man. And it's great to see that the guys I used to work with, or guys that were in the business, and even guys that we never wrestled each other or were in different companies at different times, that you meet and seeing a lot of the new guys. It's just incredible. So I always enjoy that.
Yeah. And it was really cool when we were at For the Love of Wrestling last year, when I was with Mark, obviously guys that he worked with. So like Al Snow and Ken Shamrock were catching up with him, but also it was lovely to see like Matt Riddle and Elias and Hornswoggle and Nick Nemeth, like this generation that grew up watching Marc Mero were just so pleased to see him. And I think that's the wonderful thing about today's wrestling stars. We're all fans. They're all like you and I, John, back in the 80s and 90s. And so they were just delighted to see Mark, because he doesn't do many of these conventions. I suspect he might do a few more now that he's got his book out. I suspect we might see him a bit more out there as there's hopefully a bit of a reprisal of fans rediscovering the magic of Johnny B. Bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you 2 final questions then, Mark. And firstly, as we mentioned in the intro, you are a former WWF Intercontinental Champion with the lovely white leather strap there. That will go down as of your hallmark moments in your wrestling career. Obviously, you mentioned being a former 3-time WCW World TV Champion, but being a WWF Intercontinental Champion, and that championship has been held by the cream of the crop. It's the workhorse championship. What did it mean to you at the time to become the Intercontinental Champion? And I think this was possibly in your first year as well.
Yeah, it was such an honor, because what the WWF had back then was a tournament to crown the champion, and I had to beat Owen Hart, I had to beat Stone Cold Steve Austin, I had to beat Ron Simmons to eventually win the belt, and it was an honor. I mean, to be chosen to be able to do that was an amazing time in my life that I'll never forget.
And there's a beautiful full circle moment. I'm not going to give it away because it's in the book, but there's a beautiful full circle moment between Ron Simmons and Marc Mero. Very, very fitting that Ron Simmons is who Mark should beat for his first title in WWF.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we mentioned Lex Luger going into the class of 2025, a Hall of Fame, a good friend of yours. What do you think that will mean to Lex, considering the journey he's been on over the last 20, 30 years? What do you think that will mean to Lex to be entered into the WWE Hall of Fame as the class of 2025?
I couldn't be more happy and proud of him. He's such a great guy, man. I mean, he when there's a lot of people have shared stories about when he was in the business and he wasn't always the nicest to people or whatever. And you talk about changing someone's life and how they respond to people and how kind he is and how much he loves and cares about other people. it's so deserving to see him get this great honor. And I know he is thrilled. And he's just a happy person, man. I tell you, it is so much fun just to be around that guy. It's just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering your legacy in the wrestling business and everything you've done since leaving the wrestling business, one day, could we see Marc Mero in the WWE Hall of Fame? Is it something that you would like to happen in the future, or is it not something you give much thought to?
I don't think there's anyone that's ever been in the WWF ring that wouldn't have loved to have that honor bestowed upon them. You know, if it happens, it happens. But I got to tell you, it's never going to define my legacy. My legacy is not going to be, you know, being in the Hall of Fame or winning a belt or how much money or how nice of a car I drove. It's going to be the difference I was able to make in someone else's life. And that's what I pray and hope my legacy will always be.
Yeah, absolutely. And gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to plug the book one final time. Ben, starting with you. You are the writer, the author of Marc Mero, Bad to Good, the inspiring story of a wrestling wild man. Why should we be getting our hands on this book, my friend?
Because I got bills to pay.
Besides that,
this is, you know, it's a really beautiful tale of resilience, of overcoming adversity, of never giving up. But I also think that it's going to give people a really fascinating behind the scenes glimpse into the wrestling business that they perhaps have never seen before, because Marc really did straddle, you know, both sides of the Monday Night Wars. Without Marc jumping ship to the WWF, things would definitely have been different. He did change the game with guaranteed contracts. That was a massive turning point in the wars. And I think the different insights that we've got in there from all these different characters, but from Eric Watts to Eric Bischoff to Mick Foley, all kind of layering in their insight on Marc's career. I think this is a very special book. It's one that, you know, Marc and I have poured our heart and soul into for a year. There was no way we were going to put out this book unless it was the best book we possibly could. You know, great kind of publishing support from Inside the Ropes, from Kenny McIntosh and from Dante Richardson. There's a lot of minds here that love wrestling deeply, respect wrestling deeply, and it's quite a weighty book as well. It's a long read. It's about 400 pages, so it's good value for money. But yeah, I hope that everyone who reads it comes away just feeling really inspired and like they can do anything they set their minds to, because that is absolutely what Marc Mero has done.
Absolutely. And Marc, your book, it's telling your life story in 400 pages, but why should we be getting a copy of it before WrestleMania to whet our appetites for the show of shows? But tell us a bit about your book and why we should be getting our hands on it, Marc.
Well, I think everyone that reads this book is going to find out that they have a little piece of this book in them. Like I said earlier, it's overcoming adversity, losing a loved one, divorce, depression, or whatever it would be, but it was overcoming and finding your place, finding your why, finding why you're here on this earth, and realizing that, man, you can do amazing things. Just don't ever give up.
There we go. And I think on that note, we shall sign off on this episode of Wrestling with Johners. But thank you to everybody that's watched this evening and sent in questions or comments, including Brian Clark. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you to my guests, Ben Veal, and my very special guest, Marc Mero. But we look forward to seeing you over here in the UK next week as part of the Inside the Ropes mini tour with yourself. Yeah, just go and check out Inside the Ropes socials for all details and links as to where you can get your tickets or be a part of those shows with Marc Mero. But Marc, Ben, thank you so much for being wonderful guests on this very special live episode of Wrestling with Johners. And we hope to see you both very, very soon. But keep up the good work. Don't forget to buy the book. It's an excellent read. I highly recommend it. But gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.